The Southwestern Vermont Chamber of Commerce held one of its annual legislative breakfasts at the Center for Advancement of Public Action, or CAPA, at Bennington College on Monday, February 26th. Several of the area's state legislators were there, along with a substantial number of chamber members, to get a mid-season update from the lawmakers on how things were going in Montpelier so far, and what may be coming in the second half of the session following town meeting, which is coming up quickly on March 5th. Not surprisingly, education taxes were a hot topic of conversation, but so was the subject of how to draw more businesses to Vermont, and especially southern Vermont. But the conversation included a wide array of topics. State Senator Brian Campion kicked off the reports and summaries from the legislators.
I was just talking to Representative Morrissey, and everybody knows school construction and school costs are up. We're grappling as a state. We have in some ways this perfect storm that has come together where ARPA funds have dried up. Schools for the past several years have used federal funds to fill in gaps where they really needed them. Mental health issues, teachers, staff support, all sorts of things. And those dollars have now disappeared, and schools want to keep those positions in place. You also have high costs around health insurance and inflation, so that is one of the things that is causing this push, this increase that many people are concerned about around taxes. And we can get more into that as time goes on. And many people probably know the administration, the governor just signed H.850, which hopefully will put some controls over the cost of school taxes this year.
He was followed by several others.
And then Act 250, that's a balancing act. It's a give and take. It's like how much power do we take away from the towns for an overarching goal of the state, and sort of step in and say, you're going to allow this. I don't care, what you feel, but we're going to mandate this. And, I'm very cautious of that approach because we're always been local control. So we'll see where that leads.
I'll just say also that a couple of things about sort of the current state of the economy. We've had, over the course of the last few years, of course, lots of federal money coming in. Consistently, the state economists have, I would say, been conservative in their forecasts and have come to us every 6 months saying, oh, you know what, we have more money than we thought we were going to have. And we've been able to put that funding into some of the programs that we talked about. We may have reached the point where that's not going to happen when we revisit the state fiscal picture in July, but by that time we will have finished our work, we will have passed a budget, and the budget has to be balanced, not by law, but just that's the way we do things. It has to be a balanced budget. And we've got a forecast right now that is a little bit grim compared with what we've been looking at in the past. So there's a lot of need, a lot of maybe I'll say desires for funding that are not going to be met.
I'm going to touch a lot on a really big issue that my committee is taking up now. I'd say it's probably our number one priority, and that is emergency housing, the GA motel, hotel voucher program that we hear so much about. And just for a couple updates, I'll first start by saying that my committee is taking up a committee bill on this. So we've been taking testimony for weeks on it. We're going to continue to be working on a bill that tries to address this issue for the year, and it's going to continue throughout the year working with the Senate and everybody on it. But a couple numbers. As of February 5th, we received a report from the state that there's 1,628 households statewide. So that's motel rooms statewide with people who are experiencing homelessness and being sheltered in hotels. Within Bennington, there's 186 hotel rooms in just Bennington County that are sheltering people experiencing homelessness.
We've passed a couple bills out of the committee already. One deals with timber theft on land. So we heard some really heartbreaking testimony about folks who have been taken advantage of by sort of unscrupulous loggers who will sort of knock on the door and say, hey, I saw you, maybe you'd like me to take care of that issue over there, and then a couple weeks later they're left with their, far more than they agreed to being taken, their land's left a mess, they never receive any payment, and the person takes off. So we passed a bill that would sort of attempt to address that issue in a really targeted way, and sort of help defend the good name of a lot of folks who are working in our forests who perform really important, crucial work on our working lands in forestry and logging.
More questions from the audience prompted a wider-ranging conversation.
We're talking about school tax, property tax, and we say it's 20 to 27%. What's the driver on that? I've heard it's Gold Town's budgets that are driving it. What's the real deal there?
I will say things have changed within our school structures and what folks look at as priorities. The budget just has gone up this year alone. If that's what it ends up passing, will be over, just for education, over $2 billion. And yet across the state, and I don't say this as a negative, but many of our schools are failing, can't meet basic standards. Houston, we got a problem.
In terms of the cost drivers, you do look at construction costs right now, schools are paying. You look at the inflationary numbers, you look at the cost, I think, I'm not sure if we talked about healthcare, maybe it was Representative Murphy, healthcare costs, the end of ARPA funds, federal funds, all these things are coming together to really push up school costs across the state. So those are the, I'd say,
Brian,
what you would confer as the.
would you also add in general there's a declining population and a lack of tax-paying Vermonters? I mean,
No
we're just a
question,
small
there's a
state.
decline. We educate roughly 70,000 students K-12. And as Representative Morrissey said, at a huge cost, and we're not getting the results we need. And there are some schools out there that are going to have some serious conversations on town meeting day. There are schools in rural Vermont that might be I think about where my cousins went to school in the Kingdom. They're graduating 10 kids a year. Some are graduating 5 kids a year. These are districts that probably cannot and maybe should not continue the way they are educating kids. And some of those schools, they may need to close, and they may need to either tuition their kids to St. Johnsbury Academy or other local public schools. But something has got to happen because it is pushing costs up everywhere.
If you asked me 5 years ago, I could explain to you the CLA, I could the homestead rate, I could explain how all the tax rates went. It is with Act 127, no one can explain to you how the tax rates go. And I think if people who have spent years in education cannot explain how you get to the tax rate and who pays the money, I think it's really time we take a look at how to break down how it happens.
But what is Montpelier doing to raise the tax base? This is a Chamber of Commerce sponsored function. What is Montpelier doing about increasing commerce in the state, bringing people in? I just heard we're losing people like that, so therefore we have to tax more. Why don't we turn it around? What is Montpelier doing to increase the tax base?
Dave.
I would respond actually a little bit differently as far as I think a strategy we've used is bringing people into the state. But I also do like to think about the many people that are in the state right now who aren't engaged in the workforce, right? So for a long time I've been advocating for people with various disabilities, people with substance use disorder, a lot of people right now that are being supported by our social services system to really create a stronger pathway into the workforce for those individuals. A couple years ago we piloted a program working with people in recovery so that a few recovery centers would be embedded with workforce. Counselors that would also provide support for businesses. So if you have somebody with, say, an active opioid use disorder who may need to, have medications with them. I think that's something that might intimidate some employers who aren't completely educated on the issue. So making sure that there's sort of a sort of building both the culture on the side of the potential employees and the potential employers to recognize that there's a large swath, I think, of Vermonters who are ready to enter the workforce, and that it would actually benefit their therapeutic development as well as add in there. And yeah, just building a culture around that and building the supports for those individuals.
8,000 people to Vermont when we already have an almost 0% vacancy rate. Right now, there's nowhere for them to go to. There are incredibly qualified applicants applying for jobs and being offered jobs. And then when they start to look for housing opportunities, they realize there's no place for them to move to here. So if you build it, they will come. If you don't, they won't. We have to figure out a way to make development possible. My husband and I had our eye on a piece of property in Shaftesbury for a few years that we could put at least 26 homes on. And we would have to be $2 million into the infrastructure before we even break ground on the first house. We don't have that kind of money. I'm not willing to take that kind of risk. Our state is making it impossible for us to build homes. I'm not talking McMansions, I'm talking ranches and capes for people who just want to move here and work here. So if we don't allow people to build homes, to be able to house people, whether they are for rent or to own, we are never going to be able to grow our population. So we've got to provide opportunities for housing first. And then I completely agree that we are not doing enough to think about large industry. I'm very concerned about Orbis consolidating all of their employees in Manchester. They are leaving a humongous campus empty. Obviously, it's still going to be on their tax roll. They're still going to have to pay the bills, but who's going to move in there? Is Vermont doing anything to think outside the box and figure out who would be really the right candidate? Is that part of the legislature's job? Is that the governor's job? Whose job is that to figure out who should we be recruiting to help lots of these problems get solved in that one development?
Afterwards, we had a chance to talk with Representative David Durfee about what may lie ahead.
In the committee that I chair, the Agriculture, Food Resiliency, and Forestry Committee, we've got several bills that we're going to try and get through by that point, including the neonicotinoid bill that we heard about earlier today. Then after that crossover date, the Senate will have a bill or two to send us. I think it'll be less busy in our committee, and we'll be probably spending a lot more time on the floor of the House and less time in committee. We've got some big bills coming up in terms of Act 250 reform. I think that's going to take a lot of our attention, which does impact housing, does impact working lands as well. I mentioned earlier this morning that we are hoping to take up a bill that would make healthcare more affordable for more Vermonters, particularly middle-income Vermonters. And I know that's something that we've all been hoping to accomplish for a long time.
And then it was back to Montpelier for the legislators for one more week before their town meeting break, which might see more conversations about education, taxes, and housing. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.